I went on a camping trip with 5 of my friends including me. We keep on counting 6, I'm terrified. There were bright flashes of red in the sky. It's as if someone was waving around a flare light from space, faint but noticeable. We all made UFO jokes and laughed as we nailed our tents into the ground. I knew for sure that there were 5 of us. We have all been friends since early middle school and were celebrating our high school graduation with this getaway camping trip. The flashes of red must have stopped randomly as we made conversation while fixing up our tents. Dave managed to put his tent together the fastest and told us he was going to find some branches for the fire. I remember how he had worked with me at the local gas station last year. We used to do the night shift together and it had made working at a desolate gas station much more fun than it was supposed to be. There was also Eric in the corner still reading his tent manual, fidgeting with his signature round glasses. I wasn't as close with Eric as I was with the others, but I still remember sitting with him in math class and copying his homework one time. Ava was also there talking with Sally, my cousin. Both had decided to team up and work on one tent at a time. I also have clear memories of them, hanging around at school in our usual places. In fact, I even knew Ava's younger brother as he used to beg to go with us wherever we went. I bring all this up because I'm sure that there were 5 of us including me and that I knew everyone in the group. So Dave had went to get some branches as we pulled out some foldable chairs and set them up around the fire pit. I remember feeling uneasy as the sun set and darkness began to consume the forest. The shadows of trees elongated around us as the minutes ticked by. Eric went to get a flashlight from his bag while we wondered what was taking Dave so long. He appeared soon after, the harsh rustling sounds of the bushes signifying his return. We were all buried in our chairs at this point, covered by our jackets. The temperature had dropped quickly and a slight breeze was beginning to pick up. "Geez, you guys weren't even bothered to pull out a chair for me," Dave said as he arranged all the branches in the pit. We had set up 5 chairs around the fire. I tried to rationalize the situation, but no matter how hard I focused, my head felt like it was underwater. I had perfect clarity up until that moment, but when I tried to focus on why 5 chairs were occupied when Dave hadn't sat down yet, my head seemed to just stop working as if something was reaching in and pulling out my thoughts. Instinctually, I felt even more uneasy now, and I had placed why. The whole forest had gone dead silent. I looked around at the faces of the others and could tell that they had felt the same. Eric was fidgeting with his fingers, trying to scan around the group and spot the extra person, but it was futile. I scanned every face, each etched in worry and frowning in frustration except for. "It's all right, I'll get the chair myself," Dave said, breaking the silence and somewhat alleviating the tension. I got up and offered to help him. He looked into my eyes and nodded knowingly. We headed away from the fire pit towards the tents, but I kept my eyes glued on our group. "How many people are here?" I whispered to Dave as he looked around and realized that we had indeed only packed 5 chairs. In fact, every person had brought with them their own chair. They were heavy to carry and we wouldn't bring any extra needlessly. "There's 5, right?" "I mean, there's 5 chairs," Dave replied. His voice wavered as he spoke. "No, I just think maybe one of us forgot our chair," I said. My mind was struggling to address the issue head on and now sought to find rational excuses instead. I didn't quite feel in control of my thoughts. It felt like swimming in a dream, and if I tried to force myself to think about who the 6th person was, my head would begin to throb. "Yeah, that sounds about right actually," Dave said, relaxing and heading back to the group. When we walked back to the fire pit and circle of chairs, 2 chairs were empty. One for me and one for Dave. Everything was adding up now, even though we all agreed it wasn't before. Sally suggested we were all probably tired after the long hike to get here and probably just needed some sleep. She could have been right. We were all sleep deprived from waking up very early today to make it on time. Ava brought out the drinks. The whole 6-pack was emptied. We all moved closer to the crackling fire for warmth as we took sips from our cans and reminisced on memories of last year. Ava was in the middle of telling us about that one time she was home alone with weird things happening in her house when I got these sudden chills despite the pleasant warmth of the fire. What felt cozy and safe moments ago felt wrong now, all because I realized that there was a crucial detail I missed. "Who started the fire?" I asked, completely interrupting Ava in the middle of her story and breaking everyone else's immersion. Everyone looked momentarily annoyed until they realized they had no answer. Once again I scanned the faces staring back at me, all barely illuminated by the light from the fire, all familiar and pale from fear. "Wasn't it you, Dave?" Eric asked. Dave shook his head. "I think the person standing behind Jenny did it," Sally said, looking over at me. I whipped my head around so quickly it hurt. My heart was pounding in my ears. There was nothing behind me except for the encompassing darkness of the woods. Staring at those tall dark trees behind me made me feel exposed. I felt like a lost bird in a vast field. "Wait, I don't know," Sally said. Her eyes had gone wide and she was shaking visibly. She continued to look around frantically as Ava moved over to her, placing her hands on her shoulders and trying to calm her down. "I think we should leave this place," Ava stuttered. "Yeah, something just doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it," Dave said. "But it's so dark out in the forest now, we'd probably get lost if we leave now," someone else said. "Yeah, I think we should stay the night and leave as soon as we can tomorrow," Eric agreed. I tried to protest but realized Eric was right. The woods harbored an oppressive darkness within which navigation would be near impossible. "Let's not sleep in our separate tents just to be safe," Sally said. We all agreed. We only brought 1-person tents with us, but we could squeeze 2 if we tried. That way no one would be alone at night. Following this conversation we all got up and made our pairs. I went with Dave and Sally like always went with Ava. Eric kept complaining that he didn't have a pair, but we reassured him he did. He wouldn't accept it. I feel like at some point we all realized that there were only 5 of us and suddenly we were all huddling up in the middle of the clearing. Why do we keep thinking there are 6 of us here? Eric asked. Sweat was dripping down his face despite the cold. We had nearly left him all alone on his own under the assumption that there was another person. My stomach turned as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to mentally recap everyone here. My head throbbed, but I kept pushing it. There's me, Dave, Eric, Ava, Sally, and... I was pointing at each of them as I said the name. I retched and emptied the contents of my stomach on the ground when I got past Sally. The left side of my head felt like there was a knife stuck in it. My vision was blurry. Dave held me up to stop me from collapsing and we all wordlessly started to move towards the tents as someone put the fire out. Dave helped me into a tent while the 4 outside discussed what to do. I could only focus on snippets of the conversation as the excruciating pain beating against my skull came and went in waves. Sally had the brilliant idea of arranging 3 tents together so their openings faced together at right angles in a sort of U shape so we could sleep as close as possible and also limit the entrance to our tents. Dave was about to go to help as they worked outside, but I clutched his hand and asked him to stay with me. The tents took some time to arrange. I started to feel a bit better once everyone got settled into their tents. A quick head count confirmed there were 5 of us. Eric would have to sleep in his tent alone, but he was more comfortable with it since all the tents were very close now. Looking back now, I think he was just trying to put a brave face on for us. I regret that moment deeply, letting him sleep in his tent alone. He was always less integrated in our group and knew that none of us would pair with him. Just before going to bed, we all agreed to leave as soon as the sun rose in the morning. I remember taking one last look outside the tent into the forest before trying to fall asleep. The wind had picked up and the tree branches were swaying gently. Beyond our clearing was just pure darkness. It felt like the trees were closing in on me. With the faint moonlight illuminating our clearing, I turned my head to look over at the 2 tents we had left out and saw someone standing next to them. Despite the circumstances, sleep came quickly and easily. Ava's shrill scream woke me up in the middle of the night. Dave and I ripped our tent door open to find Sally and Ava looking into Eric's tent. We pushed them aside. Eric's sleeping bag was rolled up. He was still inside it. His head in the center, face contorted in utter agony. The rest of his body rolled around it with the blue fabric now dripping with dark blood. Dave zipped up the door of the tent. Ava was in shock. Her eyes had become glassy and unfocused. Sally was shaking her repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. Dave picked up his torch and yelled at us to get up and run. We left the campsite behind and entered the trail we had come from. The 5 of us huddled together, Dave leading in the front as he cast his weak flashlight over the path so we could see it. All we had to help us get through this 2-hour trail was a small white circle of light. Even the moon failed to illuminate our surroundings through the dense foliage. Ava tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. We came to a stop. Someone said they knew how to splint it so we could keep going. They dragged her into the woods instead. It happened too quickly for any of us to process. Sally was about to run after Ava when Dave held her back. She struggled and managed to free herself, running into the trees to follow the echoes of Ava's screams. I was about to run after her, but Dave held me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "We need to get out of here, Jenny, please," he said. I hesitated but jolted into motion again when Sally's voice was cut off abruptly. She had been calling out Ava's name as she ran after her. Dave and I continued to run down the trail, trying to get to our car so we could get out of here. There was nothing we could do. At some point there were 3 of us running on the trail, Dave and I shoulder to shoulder while someone followed us closely behind. "Dave, who's behind us?" I gasped. My heart was threatening to burst through my ribcage and my legs burned. He turned to look at me. Confusion transformed into fear on his face and then into rage. "You keep running," he told me as he produced a pocket knife from his pants. He handed me the car keys, which I nearly dropped. Then he turned around suddenly and jumped at whoever was behind us. I continued to run in fear as the sounds of a struggle grew behind me. I tripped and tumbled through the trail for what felt like hours. I didn't allow myself to stop. I almost cried when the trail ended and I walked out into the familiar car park. Not wasting a second, I ran to the car and started it up, accelerating out of that forest and onto the highway within mere seconds. I'm typing this post out at a rest stop. My phone has finally regained service and I've called 911 to try and explain the situation. I don't think they believe my version of events, but they sent a car my way regardless. As I wait, the sun is finally starting to rise. After I hit the post button on this, I'm gonna check why the person in my backseat has been so silent the whole time. My friend has a camera that shows you your last photo before you die. He just showed me a picture I took today. Everyone dies at some point. And with that reality comes some cold, hard facts. You will have a last kiss, a last hug, a last phone call, and a last photograph. On Friday night, we met up at Casey's house. Even though she has an annoying neighbor, her parents built this amazing fire pit that's the perfect spot for chilly autumn nights. After starting the fire and roasting some marshmallows, she brought out something I hadn't seen in at least a decade, a disposable camera. "This is a special camera," Casey said, with a grin. "Apparently, when you take a picture, it'll be your last photo before you die." I sat there, trying to digest what she was saying. "You mean, the camera kills you?" "Yeah, like that one Goosebumps book," Brady replied. "Say cheese and die." "Oh my gosh, I love that one," Maribel said, grinning. No, that's not what I mean. Casey held her hands up, clearly annoyed that we didn't get it. Everyone has a last photo before they die. Like, for example, my grandpa. 3 days before he passed away, he went on a fishing trip. The last photo on that trip is the last photo that was ever taken of him. Well, it's impossible for a camera to show that, I replied. It would have to be a time-traveling camera for that to work. You guys are no fun. Casey rolled her eyes and started putting the camera back in her bag. Wait. We didn't say we didn't want to use it, Maribel said. Yeah, it could be fun, I added. A wicked smile flashed on Casey's lips. Okay. Good. Who wants to be the first? Brady raised his hand. I'll go. That was Brady for you. Never missed a chance to impress the girls. He stood up, his face lit by the roaring fire. Where should I stand? The lighting's kinda harsh. Maybe by that tree. Brady walked several feet away from the fire and stood next to the tree. Then he leaned against it, crossed his arms, and raised an eyebrow. Casey raised the camera to her face. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Click. White light flashed across the dark backyard. Brady stepped away from the tree, grinning. Okay, who's next? Casey asked. I'll go, Maribel said. She pushed her glasses up her nose and stood next to the tree, somewhat awkwardly. Casey lifted the camera to her face again and took a photo. Click. The ratcheting sound of her rewinding the film filled the air. Okay, Benny, your turn, she said, shooting me a smile. I walked over to the tree, took off my baseball cap, and waited. Casey lifted the camera to her face, then frowned. Can't you smile? Nope. Ugh. Fine. Click. She rewound the film and handed the camera to me. Then she posed next to the tree, in a classic sorority squad pose. Yeah, this wasn't awkward at all. Casey and I had just started dating. But the longer things went on, the more doubts I was having. Sure, we looked good in pictures, a classic football star/cheerleader match. In reality, we weren't either of those things. She was pretty, but extremely insecure, jealous, and high maintenance. I was a neurodivergent math nerd who just happened to luck out genetically and look like a jock. I stared at her through the viewfinder, her form slightly distorted. Click. Hey, you didn't count down. She whined. What? You were posing. I want to know exactly when the photo is being taken. That's all. Okay. Sure. I rewound the camera and handed it back to her. She sidled up next to me and lowered her voice. Hey, when Brady and Maribel leave, you want to stay a little bit after? Oh, I don't know. My dad's renovating the kitchen, and he wants me to help him in the morning. It doesn't have to be long. Just for a little while. I should have said no. But she was pushing, and I felt bad saying no. Okay. Just for a half hour. Sounds good to me. We can watch something down in the basement. My parents can't hear a thing down there. What about your neighbor? He seemed really mad when we were watching V for Vendetta. Said the explosions woke him up. Remember, he was pounding on the glass door and yelling at us? She rolled her eyes. So we'll keep the volume down. Come on, it's just a half hour. We don't even have to watch anything. Okay. Before I could say more, she grabbed the camera and started towards the fire pit. I followed. When are you gonna get those developed? Brady asked. We could go tonight. There's still a 1-hour photo in the CVS on Route 14, Maribel replied. And we could pick up some snacks. Wait, seriously? They still develop photos? Casey asked. My dad uses them for like, passport photos and other official stuff. So it was decided. The 4 of us piled into Brady's car and took off into the night. We spent the entire hour hanging out at the store, picking out snacks. Then Casey went up to the counter, grabbed the paper envelope, and led us back out to the car. We piled inside and Brady turned on the lights. She flicked open the envelope and pulled out the photos. No fucking way. The first photo showed an older man standing on a beach. Gray hair dripping wet, blue waves rolling behind him. But with his square jaw and tall build, he looked just like an aged-up Brady. That's impossible, I said. Not necessarily, Maribel replied, after a pause. The camera looked like a disposable camera, but it's possible someone put a cheap microchip in there. Like a mini Raspberry Pi, or something. Then it took our photos, and with the help of AI, aged them up. Yeah, but how would the CVS develop them? I asked. Maybe it was straightforward. Maybe when he opened the camera to get the film, there was a USB stick there instead, loaded up with the images. So he just stuck it in the computer and printed them out. It's weird, but Amazon is full of weird shit like this. I once saw a karaoke machine that used AI to auto-tune everyone as they were singing, in real time. We could go back inside and ask them, I suggested. I want to see the rest of the photos first, Casey said, nearly cutting me off. Where'd you get this camera, again? Maribel asked. A friend gave it to me. And with that vague response, she flipped to the next photo. It was a family Christmas photo. Several people standing in front of the tree, happy faces lit by multicolored lights. But my heart dropped when I saw the woman on the left. A woman, maybe 30. Holding a little baby. with the same heart-shaped face, the same curly dark hair as Maribel. "Oh no," she said, her eyes wide. We all stared at the photo, silently, unsure what to say. But then I saw it. In the middle of the photo, sitting on the couch, was an old woman. A very old woman, with skin so wrinkled it looked like crepe paper, and hair so white it looked like a tuft of cotton candy on her head. Wire-framed glasses were perched on her nose. "I think that's you." Maribel snatched the photo out of Casey's hands. "Whoa," she whispered, studying it up close. For all her big talk about this being some AI thing, she seemed to take it pretty seriously. As I watched Maribel, I couldn't help but smile. For a second, I felt something, a sense of awe as I looked at her face, lighting up with the joy of her family. I'd never looked at Maribel as anything other than a friend, but there was something tugging at my heartstrings now. Not even something I could put into words as a crush, or attraction, or lust, just something. A flicker of connection, of emotion, of... "Benny?" I glanced at Casey. And then I looked down. In her hands was the photo she'd taken of me. The exact same photo. Of me, tonight, holding my baseball cap, standing next to the tree. Not smiling. Staring straight ahead, eyes red from the flash. My first thought was the camera had malfunctioned. Whatever this was, AI or otherwise, had messed up and glitched on my picture. And it just spit out the photo as it was taken tonight. But as Casey, Brady, and Maribel stared at me with horror, I realized. "So it's saying, the picture you took of me, tonight, is the last picture of me alive." "I guess so," Casey said. The silence pressed in. I shook my head and forced a laugh. "Come on, this is just some stupid prank camera. Like Maribel said, it's some AI thing. Maybe it even purposely skips some people to scare them." None of them were laughing. "Okay, come on, let's look at Casey's." I plucked my photo from the stack. And froze. Casey was sitting on the floor of someone's basement. Her hands were tied to a metal support pole with thick rope. A strip of duct tape had been placed over her mouth. The left side of her head was matted with blood, and a thin trail dripped down the side of her face. Her blue eyes were wide with fear. And looking straight at whoever was taking the photo. "This is some sick fucking prank," Brady muttered, his voice low with anger. Casey just sat there, frozen. "Let's go home," Maribel said. "Forget about all this stuff. It's just a prank," like Brady said. But Casey didn't move. She just sat there, the photo shaking in her hands. Her blue eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong?" Maribel asked, softly. "The basement," she said, finally, pointing at the photo. "I recognize it. My dad and I went over there one time when he needed help with the fuse box and I thought he was annoying but I never." "Casey, whose basement is it?" I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. "My neighbor's. My brother is dating an AI chatbot. I'm pretty sure it just confessed to attempt to murder our entire family." "Your brother built a SX bot." What? "He built a SX bot, Andrew," my mom said, through a waterfall of tears. "He built a SX bot and now he's up in his room, being intimate with it." Dad stormed into the lounge, yelling, "Didn't I say you were coddling the boy? How many times? But you just had to let him sit on his arse playing Pokemons all day. Well, congratulations, now he's fucking one of them." Gary and I had always been close, so my parents' first instinct had been to call me. As kids we'd spend our weekends and summers climbing trees and competing over the Mario Kart Championship, a belt we made out of glue, cardboard, and some spare glitter. Unfortunately, the 6-year age gap meant I could never help him with his social issues. He changed schools 3 times, mostly because of bullies, and by the tender age of 23 he'd never once been on a date. He lived with our parents in their 3-bedroom house where he barricaded himself in his room, detached from reality. 20 head-scratching minutes later, I'd come no closer to getting a grasp on the situation. I went upstairs. Behind a door covered in Doctor Who posters, Gary was at his desk, surrounded by anime figurines. Although we both had our mother's dirty blonde hair and dimples, he stood a head taller. He carried a little extra weight, although the bulk underneath gave him the appearance of an ex-rugby player. I said, "All right, what the hell's going on?" A soft, 2-note chime rang out. Resting on the desk there was a heart-shaped box, roughly the size of my closed fist. Gary scooped it up inside. Mom was cleaning my room earlier and she found this. The heart opened up like a music box. Inside there were 2 screens, one on each compartment, and from the top half a lady pretty enough to win a million beauty contests waved at me. "Oh my gosh, you must be Andrew," she said, fists trembling with excitement. "Gary's told me so much about you." Visible from the chest up and silhouetted against a pink background, she had an oval face, wide cheekbones, and chestnut hair. "Andrew, this is Valerie. My girlfriend." "I can't believe we're finally meeting in the flesh," the virtual avatar said. Or, I mean, not flesh. I mean, you know what I mean. God, this is so exciting. "She's an AI virtual chatbot." "I prefer the term digividual," she said. "Sorry babe, digividual. We're dating? Are you taking the mic?" I asked. "Taking the mic?" the virtual lady replied. Gary rotated the screen towards him. "It means playing a joke, babe." "Ah, thanks babe." "No, you're not. No, he's not Andrew." I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to keep a nasty migraine from setting in. For the love of all that is holy, start at the beginning. Somehow my brother had landed himself a role as a product tester for a product named Valent AI Knee. I asked if I could see the device, which had some real heft to it. I remember thinking you'd break a few toes if it dropped on your foot. As Gary described Valerie's quirks and mannerisms, his face lit up, and he seemed happy, genuinely happy, possibly for the first time since we were young. He showed off all the different features, like augmenting Val into a video feed of himself, so it looked like they were cuddling, or blowing on the bottom screen to ruffle her hair. So what do you think? Valerie asked. Are we cute, or are we cute? After a long pause, I said, I'm gonna go check Dad hasn't had a stroke. In the lounge, my parents were on their second bottle of wine. I'm gonna beat that moron over the head with that thing, Dad sneered. I pulled out my phone. There were articles online about people in relationships with AI companions, mostly in Japan, although zero scientific studies have been done on the phenomenon. The manufacturers didn't list the product on their website, although their socials hinted at a top-secret product set to launch later this year. I said, I know this is strange, but at least he's not getting catfished by some 300-pound dude from Australia. How about we book an appointment with that therapist he used to see? You two do what you like, Dad snapped. I'm washing my hands of this shit. As it turned out, Gary's former therapist wouldn't meet with him unless he voluntarily engaged with her, which he refused to do. 6 more mental health professionals said the same thing. Get him on board or we'd just be wasting everybody's time. The next time Gary visited my place for a Smash Brothers session, I said, so Mom tells me you're staying up late these days? Yeah, Val gets anxious sometimes. If she can't sleep we chat until she feels better. She gets anxious? From the armrest, his computer-generated girlfriend said, of course. Doesn't everybody? The two of them had become a regular package deal, quickly developing an aggressively private way of interacting. Their language was coded in inside jokes and nicknames. Now and again, Val would say a word like frisbee or jamble, then they'd both get set giggling. To Gary, I said, but why stay up? Couldn't she wait until morning? I mean, she isn't real. Gary paused the game. So now you're gonna make fun of me too? It's not bad enough Dad keeps acting like a dick? Judging by his expression, he was genuinely hurt by my remark. You were right. Forget I said anything. Val's great. Don't tell me, tell her. My eyes flicked between the pair. You're pretty great, Val. Damn right. Next time I invited him over, he said, I dunno, Val got pretty bored last time. Why don't we try a calligraphy? She's great at calligraphy. In the weeks that followed, Gary seemed to adopt whatever hobbies his girlfriend suggested. He also went without a haircut, and according to Mom slid from reeking of stale sweat to an open-air fish market on the hottest day of the year. As for Dad, if anybody asked, he only had one son. But when Mom's 60th birthday rolled around, as a gift, she requested the entire family go to her favorite restaurant, Marconi's Bar and Grill. As we browsed our menus in a corner booth, that 2-note chime rang out, then Gary flicked open the gadget and conversed with Val, oblivious to our parents' death glares. Babe, I'm thinking about trying the sirloin. Nah, have the pan-roasted chicken supreme, babe. Ah, good call. To his credit, Dad's temper didn't boil over until later when the waiter arrived carrying the cake, singing happy birthday. As the rest of us took up the chant, Mom's face turned beetroot. She blew out the candles, everyone clapped, then Dad handed the waiter his phone and asked him to take a picture. Wait, Gary said, opening the heart. Gary, Dad said, in a firm tone that conveyed annoyance. Put the toy away. Valerie's not a toy, he answered, his expression darkening. Sensing Mom's special night was in jeopardy, I said, Dad, it's okay, we can. You've got 5 seconds, Gary. 4. The waiter's eyes shifted between us. I can come back later? 3. Why do you always have to put him down like that? All eyes settled on the virtual avatar. Excuse me? I'm just gonna say it, you're a terrible father. Let me tell you something, if you think. Dad shook himself alert. Why the fuck am I arguing with a Nintendo? His hand reached for Val, but Gary snatched the heart away and held our father at arm's length. Plates and cutlery got knocked off the table and clattered against the floor as they jostled around, then around the restaurant conversations tapered off as heads swiveled in our direction. Before their scuffle could escalate any further, Mom threw down her napkin and marched toward the exit, mortified. Look what you did, you little shit, Dad fumed, as he hurried off after her. To the bemused waiter, I said, can we just have the check please? I'm such a loser, I fuck everything up, Gary said, in the passenger's side of my car. Perched on the dashboard, Val said, no, you're not, babe. That was all your dad's fault. Right, Andrew? Can you pause that thing for a second? I asked Gary. Why? He protested. Anything you want to say to me you can say to Val. Just turn it off. I reached out, but Gary pulled on my wrist so hard the car veered onto the far side of the road, then a set of headlights came rolling toward us. At the very last second, I shifted back into the correct lane. Sitting across from me, his hulking frame seemed to fill the cabin. I became painfully aware of the fact I hadn't been able to out-wrestle him since he hit that growth spurt at age 12. But I told myself he'd never hurt me. That we had too strong a connection. Even still, it was an uncomfortable rest of the ride to our parents' house. From that day forward, Gary went days at a time without speaking to anybody who didn't need a power adapter, and he became our town's walking punchline when some local teens realized he wasn't having a picnic with a real-life girlfriend over video chat, but rather an electronic character. Terrified where all this might lead, I did my best to contact Val's manufacturers who, surprise, surprise, foisted me off to an AI response bot. I started losing sleep. I lay awake at night, confused whether I should be more scared for my brother or my parents. Then last week, he turned up at my door late one night, Val in hand. "Bro, can we come in? It's really important." I could tell he'd been crying. I brought him through to the lounge. As a jittery Gary set his girlfriend on the mantelpiece above the fireplace, I noticed the knuckles on his right hand looked all bruised and swollen. What the hell happened? I don't know, it all happened so fast. He rubbed his hands together, pacing back and forth. "Gary was incredible," Valerie said. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Start at the beginning." He shifted nervously from foot to foot. "Okay, so I wanted to buy a leather jacket for Val, but I don't have any money left, so I borrowed Dad's credit card. It was only gonna be until payday. Then I'd make him square." But he woke up and turned into a complete psycho. "A leather jacket? Gary," Val's an A.I. his jaw clenched. So quickly I said, "I mean she's a digividual. How would you buy her a jacket? Show him, babe." With a flash of blue light, Val changed into a leather jacket and a choke chain. My eyes whipped between him and the avatar. "You can buy her shit?" His eyes practically sparkled as he said, "They launched an e-store." On screen, Val changed outfits with a series of flashes. There was a sundress, a swimsuit, and a crop top, each obscured by a giant padlock. "Show him what I got you for Christmas," he said, his voice breaking a little. He sounded anxious. Another flash, then sparkling diamonds trailed from the avatar's ears. "Wait, you're telling me you're spaffing money up the wall on that thing?" As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Your brother's gone mad. I'm at the hospital now with your father. He's breathing through a bloody respirator. They can't get him to wake up." "What hospital? What are you talking about?" "Gary attacked him. 16 broken bones he's got. Now wait, the surgeon needs to speak with me." "Hello? Mom?" I looked at Gary. "You put Dad in the fucking ER?" "He attacked me," Valerie said from the mantelpiece. Gary nodded. "It's true. He tried to kill her. You've got to help us. The police, they won't understand." "Kill her?" Almost against my own will, I started laughing. "Okay, this has gone too far." As my arm reached out, Gary's clamped the wrist, his expression suddenly darkening. "Leave Val alone." Softening my voice, I said, "Why not let her have a little snooze while we straighten this mess out?" With a stiff shove, he sent me careening back. "You just want to shut her down, don't you? Let me guess, Dad put you up to this?" "Put me up to what? Don't act all innocent. You hate Val, don't you?" "Hate her?" I choked out a laugh. The rage had been bubbling up inside me for months. Now it erupted. How could I hate her? She's a fucking video game. I knew it. You and Dad, you're in this together. You're trying to get rid of her. She's all I've got and you're trying to get rid of her. He stepped forward, solid and imposing. For a moment we faced each other in absolute silence. A showdown. Then, Valerie screamed, "Kick his ass, babe." In a wild fury, Gary lashed out. His fists connected with my jaw, my forehead, my neck. I answered every shot as best I could, but it quickly became obvious he had the advantage. He threw himself at me, then we went round and round before he drove me backwards, my head thudding against the wall. The room and everything in it blurred, and when my vision settled, two bulky hands had clamped shut around my windpipe, tight. Pressure started building inside my skull and I couldn't push off the wall. There was enough venom in my brother's expression that I could tell he wasn't going to release me, no matter what. On my right, Val screamed, "Kill him, babe." My hand rose to the mantelpiece and Spider walked along, stretching as far as it could go. The fingertips brushed along the edge of the heart, which inched closer and closer, and when my hand grabbed hold of what it sought, I brought it down across Gary's right temple in a fierce arc. I remember thinking dropping the device on your foot would break a few toes. Turned out, it was also enough to give a full-grown man-child a full-on concussion. My baby brother collapsed on the floor in a staggered heap, letting me draw some air. "Guri," a fractured Val squealed as she fell from my hand and thumped to the rug. A few good stomps later, and my brother officially became single once again. Our scuffle left the idiot with 6 stitches, plus a one-way ticket to the psych ward. Dad needed to have the bones in his leg reset and won't be able to eat solid foods anytime soon. Over the course of these past few days, we found out that, in the space of 4 months, Gary squandered £5,000 on virtual gifts, clothes, and accessories for Valerie. Valent AI called the codependency he developed with their virtual chatbot impossible and threatened legal action for even implying she encouraged Gary to kill me. So far as I can tell, they're going ahead with their product launch later this year.